Today we'll talk about content that is going to be serving your customers. And by serving your customers, you'll be able to serve your business. So I'll get into what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but just real briefly, my name is Brett Woodward. I'm a senior SEO at 2 Octobers. I've been with the company for 5 years, and in that time, I've worked for dozens of different clients, kind of all over the map, from local businesses to big enterprises and sort of everything in between. And there's a through line with content that I get a lot. People know that they need good content and they know that it's helpful to their business, but they're not exactly sure how to build something that will resonate with their audience. And I get a lot of questions on how to do that. So that's what today's talk is going to be about. As far as goals, what we're going to try to do together is learn to build higher value content that resonates with your audience so that you can earn your audience's attention, trust, and engagement, improve your bottom line. And we're going to do that in two ways. The first way is going to be by trying to identify and avoid sort of the lower value content, or just the content that doesn't quite resonate with the audience. I don't want to say bad content, but content that could be better. We're going to try to identify some of the things that contribute to that and do what we can to avoid it. And then also I'll provide a little bit of a framework for creating content that serves your users a little bit better. So what's in it for you? Why are we doing this? And it starts with visibility. Content is the thing that's out in the world. It's on your website. It's getting shares, hopefully, might be getting backlinks. It's something that you can use in newsletters. Like, it is the stuff that drives marketing and a lot of the perception of your brand online. So if you have good content that is good for your users, you will inherently get more visibility because people will want to show it, and LLMs, Google, AI mode, all of these search technologies will favor it more as it gets shared around and engaged with. You'll get benefits on the user side and the technology side by making good content. And when you've got that visibility, then you start to build recognition. So you get a perception with your audience of, oh, they're really helpful. They've helped me solve this problem, or I had a question about this product and they led me along to understand what to do next. And that builds positive associations. When you have those positive associations and recognition in place, then you start to build influence, and then you're in a position to get people to engage with you a little bit more. And more engagement means better for your business. So that's why we're doing this. And it starts with visibility and ends all the way to them interacting with you on a deeper level. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this talk, is that content that creates value for your audience is content that creates value for your business, especially in the past few years as Google and AI has changed search a lot. There's been a lot of, I don't want to say panic, but a lot of desire to show up in these places. And it sounds like for a lot of businesses out there, they're focusing on how to get served by these technologies or show up in Google better or get mentioned in AI. And they're really thinking about it from the business perspective first. And they're thinking about the audience either secondarily or not at all. And what I want to do is just say that building content for your audience that's helpful to them is inherently good for your business and will have value that is created for your business because of that. So the first part about low value content and kind of how we want to try to identify and avoid it is it's content that people didn't really ask for. It's not solving a particular problem that they had or meeting them in a place that makes sense. It's just not what they needed. And so it doesn't really resonate all that well. And that's sort of the best case scenario with low value content. It just doesn't quite resonate and they don't engage as much. But actually, if you take low value content and scale it. There's a lot of companies that are using AI to make tons and tons of content that's very low value and doesn't actually help people. That can actually erode trust. And that's the opposite of building solid reputation and influence. So at best, low value content just doesn't quite do it for your audience, but at worst, it could actually harm your brand reputation. So we want to avoid that. And I always think about it just as seeking to build content that's worth that recognition and influence that you're hoping to build. So throughout the content process, we want to be asking ourselves, is this really worth what we're trying to get out of it? Are we going to see benefits from this because we're really helping people, or are we just throwing stuff out there and hoping that it sticks? You pretty much have a good idea when you're providing great value. I'm going to show you some ways to do it better and with data, but as long as you're confident that the value you're creating is really worth the recognition that you're trying to build, you'll be on the right track. So when you're thinking about content and you're either starting to build stuff or brainstorming, thinking about your roadmap for the year, I've got a few questions that I want you to be asking yourself so that you can kind of steer clear of the content that misses the mark and head in the direction of some of the better stuff. So what problem are we solving here? Is this a real problem that people have? And are we providing a tangible, detailed solution? That's going to be pretty key. We want to make sure that we're providing value, and you do that by helping people with things that are important to them. So always think about what problem you're solving and make sure you've got something there. And then also you want to think about what unique value are you able to provide. It's no surprise that there's tons and tons and tons of publishers online, either selling the same services or products or talking about things in a similar way. It all depends on what your business model is and what your business type is. And that's all going to vary, but what's going to stay the same is that there's a ton of people out there. The internet's never been more crowded. So you really want to think about what unique value can you bring to this piece of content that maybe somebody else couldn't. And there's a common phrase in marketing called building a moat. And that means doing something essentially that's only you can do, or only you are willing to put in the time, or only you have this particular value. And that makes it harder for people to copy you or do the same thing. So build a moat and provide good value that's uniquely catered to your particular experience and expertise. And then you also really want to think about how the content that you're creating fits into your audience journey or journeys. There may be different types of people that you're serving. So you'll want to understand the journey that they go on to eventually buy your product or service, and understand the pain points that they have, what challenges they're facing along the way, how many stakeholders are involved. Is it a e-commerce brand where you're selling shoes and all you have to do is convince one person, or is it a big SaaS company that's selling software and it's going to take multiple stakeholders and many months to get the buy-in they need to actually do a demo and then purchase? So it really just depends, and you need to dig deep into your audience and the journey they go on to make sure you're providing value to them. So I want to talk about some common types of low value content as well. These are just some things that I see a lot on the internet that are easy to avoid if you think about them this way. One of them I call filler content, and it sort of lacks purpose. It doesn't really have a particular problem that it's solving, and kind of feels like you're just posting to post something. Like if you're thinking about content in the frame of I need to stick to this cadence, or we haven't posted in a while, you're probably on your way to creating some filler content. You might want to back up a little bit and ask yourself some of these questions to make sure it's not just stuff you threw out there because you felt like you needed to have something to say. It's better to actually take your time and have something good to say. Then there's something I call copycat content. And this goes back to the internet's crowded. Lots of things have been covered already. Copycat content, which is just my name for it, sort of motivated by the fear of missing out on performance that you're seeing or thinking that your competitors may be getting by having a particular piece of content or style of content. So it could be like, oh, they have a podcast, we should have a podcast. Or they have a blog on this, we should have a blog on this. And where it gets really rough is when you're thinking about it in the same topics as everyone else. I'm sure anyone who's listening to this has gone to Google, typed something in, and you see 10 links that are pretty identical looking. The titles are really similar with maybe just a couple of tweaks. The content's very similar. In marketing, we're calling this now the sea of sameness. And it's something you want to avoid because it just doesn't help you stand out. And something else that's tough about this is AI is getting better at synthesizing all this information. If hundreds of people have covered it, it kind of changes the SERP. And basically what it does is it'll say, okay, this is all common knowledge now. Everybody's covered it at this point. And so here's a summary of these key concepts. And what we're seeing is fewer and fewer people going to individual websites because Google and LLMs are doing a pretty good job of summarizing this content that's been covered over and over and over again. So like I was talking about before, think about your unique value add. It's not a bad thing to be doing competitor research. It's key, actually, but you want to make sure your motivations are in the right place. Not FOMO, but okay, let's see, they're doing this. Does this make sense for our audience? How can we integrate it so that we have a unique and interesting take on it? Can we make it better? That's a better way of doing it rather than just throwing it up there because you're seeing competitors do it. And this one's a little notorious, and it's funny because I'm a senior SEO, but there's a difference between good SEO and bad SEO, and I'm sure you know at least directionally what that looks like. I kind of hate the word SEO content because it implies that you're creating something for search visibility as opposed to human beings. So I try to stay away from that term. What also happens is you go too far into the data and you forget about the people, and then you're kind of optimizing for keywords. You're trying to structure things just so, and it ends up feeling a little bit more like it's designed for robots rather than for people, and just lacks authenticity. It doesn't have that point of view because too focused on data and ranking and visibility, and a lot of the SEO content out there forgets the people. And as I've been saying, you just can't forget the people. That's what this is all for. We're trying to reach human beings at the end of the day, and this stuff is not really working now, and it's really not going to work as AI continues to summarize things and help people interact with information differently. So that was the first part of identifying and trying to avoid some of the lower value content. There's a better approach. So there's four main parts that I think about when I'm looking at building content that serves the audience a little bit better. And a lot of this is going to be review and just putting it all together, but you've got to understand your audience. I'll talk about ways in which you can do that. But really just deep understanding of who the people are, what their challenges are, what their process is like, the journey, all that stuff. You do want to get search data, but you want to match that to the audience. You want to understand what these people are really typing into Google on a day-to-day basis or querying with these LLMs and AIs. If you can do that, then you can get right inside their brain and help direct your content. And then once you have those insights from the search data and you really have a solid foundation of understanding your audience, then you want to map those insights to the journey. We think about it as awareness, consideration, decision-making, all that stuff. There's different phases that people go through on their journey, and you're going to want content that matches and complements wherever those people are on the journey. When you have content all over the funnel, you'll be able to shepherd people along a little bit easier. And then it's time to build the stuff. So we're building valuable, comprehensible resources. It needs to be understandable by users. It needs to be engaging. So let's dive into how we do that. The first step is obviously understand your audience. And a big way you need to be doing that is just listening, doing a lot of listening. Learn from your sales team. Your sales team has lots of interaction with your audience. They probably know better than most what people are saying, what they're frustrated with, what they're excited about, what problems they are trying to solve. And you can learn a lot from the different teams. So I would recommend checking in with them and seeing what insights you can gain from speaking with your internal team. They'll probably also help you understand why your customers go with you in the first place. I mean, you should have a good idea of this already, but it's one thing to say what your values are and know your biggest benefits as a product or service, but knowing specifically why people chose you in that instance over others is really insightful too. So I would do what you can to understand those motivations and double down on them with your content. And obviously, you want to speak their language. You don't want to be too high above or too below when you're trying to meet people where they're at in the content journey. So understanding their language is going to be important. There's a bunch of ways to do that. Once you've done a lot of listening, then we're talking about strategy and modeling where we're trying to show as the audience and the full picture of their audience per se. So one thing we really love is audience personas. Some clients will have detailed PDFs about, hey, this is Jane and she's 37. This is her job and here are her motivations and this is why this product is a good fit for her and what sort of selling points that match her journey. The more you can do that, the better you'll be able to scale your efforts because everybody can be on the same page about who you're trying to reach. We've talked about the journey a ton so far, but it's really important to just continue to understand what the different stops on their journey is and how you can meet them at each stage to help move them to the next point. And then, yeah, pain points. What's keeping them up at night? What is frustrating? What needs are not being met that you can maybe find an opportunity to meet? So once you've done all of that stuff, you'll have a really good understanding of who your audience is, and you'll be able to move to this next phase of gaining insights from search data. So now we know a fair bit about who these people are. Let's go into data and really dive into what they're actually saying, what they're typing into these search tools on a day-to-day basis. I have a bunch of logos here from companies that I would recommend. A lot of these are either free or have free versions. I'll go through a few. Branch Explorer is our tool where we use BigQuery data to pull more Google Search Console data than Google Search Console would give you otherwise, and then chop it up and dissect it in ways that makes insights a lot easier, because sometimes you can get into Search Console, which is basically just all the data of what people are searching, how many searches were made, et cetera, et cetera. And it can be a little overwhelming at times if you don't know how to navigate it. So Branch Explorer makes that easy. Google Trends is great, tells you what things people are typing in are gaining in traction or losing a little bit of momentum. Google Ads has a Google Keyword Planner within Ads. And if you have a Google Ads account, it's free to use. And that'll give you search volume and a little bit of month over month or year over year data in terms of traction and momentum as well. So that's really nice. You have the big dogs, the Ahrefs and SEMrush. These are like giant mega corporations that have tons of insights on different websites, but also what people are searching. It's a great way to find long tail keywords, which are essentially really long queries that are pretty interesting to look at because you know what exactly people are having trouble with. Answer the Public and Also Asked are great too. They help you understand questions specifically that people have. Highly recommend checking them out. And SparkToro is an audience research tool. So you can get a little bit more insight on who your audience is, where they spend time online, what sort of influences they may have. It would take too long to go into little demos of all of these, but this is a good little short list of things to check out if you want to understand your audience on a little bit deeper level with data. So I've been talking a lot about the customer journey and mapping those insights to the journey. So what does that actually mean? It means understanding the different points of the journey that people are on. So they have a problem. Now it's about how we get awareness around our product, which could be the solution, or service, which could be the solution. So we'll want to build high value content, which is that HVC there at that stage. So for someone who's just becoming aware of a problem that they've got or looking for answers and they don't really have any idea of brands or solutions in mind, this is where you can bring that high value, high funnel content in and help them become aware of your product or service. And let's say someone has done their research, they're aware of you or different competitors, and now they're in the consideration phase and they're thinking, well, let's see, I'm not really sure which one's best for me. You will hopefully want to have some piece of content that will lead them to a decision by giving comparison information. Pricing is really important for people, and knowing what the features and benefits of your product or service are. Having content at that stage that catches all those people who know about you but just aren't sure if they want to go with you or not. Content that's tailored to those people at that stage in their journey is really important too. And it actually doesn't stop with once they buy from you. There's stuff you can do to make sure they're a happy customer and a repeat customer. So further down the funnel from decision is loyalty. How do you keep these people and keep them coming back? And there's lots of great content opportunities for situations like that. If you're selling a product, it could be, now that you have your XYZ, here's how to get the most bang for your buck, or how to use it the best, or take care of it. Here's maintenance. Or now that you're subscribing to our service, here's how you get the most out of our offerings. So if you provide different pieces of content that provide helpful information at each stage of this journey, you'll be able to move people through the funnel, make happy customers, and keep them. So that's what I mean when I say map the journey. And then we get into the building of the content. So we've got information about our audience, we've got data on our audience, we've mapped out our journey and understand kind of where we might have opportunities, or where we're missing out and we don't have content. Now let's build the stuff. So to build valuable, comprehensive resources, you're going to use the information that you provide. So you're going to need key concepts and make them stand out. It's not enough to have something salient that resonates with people, especially in this day and age where attention spans are short. People are making quick judgments on whether they want to stay on the page or not. Give them that value, make it stand out, say, here is a solution, here is something to take and run with, and really hone in on that and be explicit about your key concepts. And another thing you can do, which I always like to try to do, is just think about what else, what next. We have this piece of content, let's say it's a comparison piece of content, and we want to include X, Y, and Z, and we're all pretty feeling good about what we've got in the draft. Somebody should be asking, okay, what else is there? Is there anything we're missing? Is there anything that competitors have done that we could do better? Is there anything that's a need that still isn't being met? So after you've done that and you've felt good about trying to provide as much information as you can, you're going to want to provide a next step for them. So if it is a awareness piece of content where you're taking people who are in the beginning stages of understanding their problems and you're showing them solution opportunities or product opportunities, getting them aware of what exists that could solve their issues, you'll want to make sure that that piece of content ends with, here is something else you can go do. Are you ready to dive in deeper? Or do you want to explore these XYZ offerings or products or services? Make sure that there's something at the end of the content and honestly throughout the content that gives them another step, and you'll want to think about where you would want them to go next. Maybe it's a CTA that goes to a product page, or it's a catalog, or it is, talking about your demo. Just make sure that you don't end their piece of content without giving them an opportunity to explore further. So once you've given a bunch of information, you'll also want to add in your point of view. And this is where we get back to that unique value and unique expertise. You want to understand that people are coming to you for solutions. And so instead of making them kind of read through your content and decide if this is the right place or if they're going to get something from it, just come right out and say, hey, this piece of content is for, this person, and we're going to tell you this. It will save you a little bit of time because you're going to reduce bounce rates. You're going to make sure that people are understanding the value that you provide right away. And nobody has a whole lot of time on the internet these days where attention spans are short. Like I said, if you're able to come out right ahead and say, this is what you're going to get from this, they're more likely to check in and go further and get more details. Add your unique experience, try to build a moat, do something that others can't, utilize your unique flavor and understanding of your industry or audience members or technology. What do you have to offer that other people might not be able to, that could set you apart? And then it's always important to position yourself against the status quo. I think a lot of times people are a little hesitant to bring up competitors, but especially for audience members in that consideration phase, I think it's better to come out and just say, here are some of the reasons you might choose us over the other guys, or why this service is a little bit better suited for so-and-so than these other competitors, because they're going to be looking for that whether you provide it to them or not. And as a consumer myself, as we all are, when a company is honest and just comes out and says, we know what your options are, here's why we think we're the best, and what you'll get with us that you won't get with someone else, I think that's really powerful. And it's something that not everyone's willing to do. And then finally, after you've gotten a ton of information on the page that's really helpful, provided next steps, and added your point of view and unique experience, you'll want to make sure it's written in such a way that humans are actually going to engage with it, because we are notorious at bailing after reading a couple paragraphs, and if it doesn't seem like the right place for us to be, we're just not going to engage. And we've all done that with websites. So here are some tips for trying to avoid that happening. I like to think about it in terms of answers over prose. So what I mean by prose is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentence paragraphs, as opposed to actionable insights that stand alone. So provide someone an answer to a problem or a solution to an issue over kind of talking about it in lengthy language that is going to make them work harder to get value from the content. I think there is content that is okay for to use more prose, but it's not every piece of content, especially not sales related content. If you're trying to convince somebody about a product, it's much better to give them the information that they're looking for right away, rather than bury it in a whole lot of language they have to sift through. Again, if you provide answers quickly, they're more likely to continue on and try to get details afterwards. You just need to make sure that you're telling them they're in the right place. Speak your audience's language. We've covered this a few times already, but just make sure you are thinking about the ways in which they discuss the product or the service. If you can identify with them a little bit better, it'll help you in the long run. And then this one's really important. readability and scannability has probably never been this important, because not only do real people skim and scan, but all these LLMs and algorithms from search are doing the same thing. And so there's been a bunch of studies that have shown that AI is going to read things just the same way that a human would. It's going to look at headings, and it's going to focus a lot on the very beginning of the piece of content to try to understand if this is, or understand what this piece of content is about. And that's the same way a human would do it. So big concepts up front, make it scannable with headers that are directly related to or encapsulate what value they're going to get from the next paragraph. Make it enjoyable to look at and read. Huge walls of text are just really tough to look at and won't resonate and will bore people. But if you add bulleted lists, images, videos, infographics, change things up, up with the design that you've got, you'll be much more likely to retain people on the page, have them scroll to the bottom, and have engaged more fully with your piece of content. And once you've done that, you've pretty much set yourself up to have a more visible site, because better content's going to serve people. Content that serves people, they're going to engage with more. These AIs will pay attention, and Google pays attention to what people are sharing and how links are being built around these pages. So you'll get that visibility. You'll be able to build recognition and influence and get more engagement with your content. So I'll just wrap up by reiterating that if you really focus on the people, you'll be able to get value for your business. And just don't worry too much about making sure that your content is going to serve you in the long run. Really think about it from your audience first. The rest will follow. So that's the end of the talk, and thanks for joining.